I am so happy to be here because we're going to talk to a filmmaker who every time he makes a film, he blow my mind, he make my heart swell, and he lights a huge fire in my creative soul, and he makes me fall in love with cinema again. Every time he makes a film. He also just happened to be, he also happens to be a kind and generous person, a friend, who's also really funny, for many of you don't know. So please let's welcome Denis Villeneuve and his wonderful screenwriter, co-writer, Jon Spaihts. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Smile, Denis, smile. I'm going to read the questions because.
First of all, I would like to say I apologize. Thank you so much for having seen the movie in a theater. That means a lot to Jon.
Yes.
Thank you.
As you guys can tell, the film has this forward momentum that is incredible when there is a mountain of information that needs to be conveyed. I think you guys did the impossible. So talk about how did you have this perfect pacing and also like so expertly hiding all that information in the scenes?
We say as little as possible about everything that needs to be talked about. And wherever an image can do the work, you let an image do the work. There are so many things you could know about this world, but the number of things you absolutely need to know to understand the drama is deceptively small. And so the process of distillation is really the trick. And you are always guided by the emotional experience of the characters. Your characters are going through a thing, and we want to go through it with them. We want to feel what they feel. We want to be grounded in their experience. And so we just need to know enough about the stakes and the mechanics of the world to understand what they're going through. What is their hurt? What are they afraid of? What are they hoping for in this moment? What are they trying to do? And I think it is Denis' signal gift that he tells stories visually, that he constructs physical spaces, that he constructs action, and that he puts images together in a way that tell the story. It is trite to say that an image is worth 1,000 words, but you can pack so much information about the nature of a world into those physical constructions and into those pictures. And I think the only way to get the novel into even 2 films is to do that kind of work.
And also, if I may, Jon and I, we decided at the beginning, we made some bold, for the people who know the novel, there's elements that we put all our focus on the Bene Gesserit. It's a Bene Gesserit adaptation. There's like, let's call them factions or school of thoughts, like the Mantat or the Spacing Guild, that are barely seen or feel in the movie. It's like, it's really, we made some bold choices at the beginning to try to create the most simple storyline.
How many pages was the first draft of Dune 2?
I mean, a different number every week. It was
Did you start with 250?
No.
Oh, that's good.
No. It's we tried to be. We were quite disciplined about that.
Yeah, 120s. It was a rational draft.
120.
Yeah,
that's really good. You're making us feel really bad right now. Okay, thank you. So one little personal thing. So Denis is super generous, and I'm obviously, every filmmaker would be lucky enough to learn his process. So I got to sit in at his visual effects meetings. I got to sit in at his DI for this movie. And I want to talk about the beginning of the film, because I saw the beginning of this film, that sequence, without sound, because we were in DI together. And my reaction was so all over, because I was shocked by the tension. I was shocked when the bodies are falling, when they're taking off in a small screen without sound. Talk a little bit about that storyboarding and screenwriting, the relationship between the two that you told me about.
But the thing is that, first of all, you have to know that when I'm depressed, I invite Chloé.
Your
You're
service.
very, very, very generous with me all the time. But this sequence, when we work on that sequence at the beginning, John and I, the idea was to try to bring as much as possible information in the action sequence. See, there's a lot of that full first sequence is like a kind of thing of recap of the relationship, all the characters, their relationships. A sequence like that is we write it, and then after that there's the storyboard process where I will revisit the scene with images, and from the storyboards we will go back into screenwriting according to the storyboards.
And to make it more complicated, he shot part of that in the real eclipse.
Yeah, that was that honestly, it's a total coincidence. we shot that scene over a period of many days in the desert in Jordan and in Abu Dhabi, and as we were shooting in Jordan, by absolutely total coincidence, there was a real eclipse, and I had to stop shooting at one point and put all the cameras around the sun, and the real eclipse is actually in the movie. But that honestly, it's a gift from the gods of cinema.
Did you look up and say, "It's written"? I just wanted
From now on, yes, he did.
So traditionally, messiahs in cinema are often have a sense of divine purpose, but Paul isn't like that. His internal conflict is a huge part of what drives those movies. So can you talk a little bit about your approach?
You want to start?
Dune is the story of imperialism and a story of colonizers. And our strange journey as readers of the book, an audience of the film, is that we climb in with a good, decent, earnest, hard-striving kid born to a noble family, but born into the lap of the colonizers. And his mission is to go forth and colonize. And in Denis' first film, you see Paul's many small protests against the nature of their occupation. And, some small pride that the Atreides occupation is more benevolent or more civilized than the Harkonnen occupation before them, but still an acute consciousness on his part that he is an occupier, that he is a colonizer. You hear his father's cynicism about the political game that they're playing. It's a beautiful thing about the novel of Dune that it is aware of these things. And we see in Paul a good and decent young man coming of age and being driven to contemplate doing terrible things. And there are two forms of colonization happening in the planet of Arrakis, because under the auspices of the Imperium, some great house is appointed regent and just does the resource extraction. Classic colonial play, such as is happening in many nations of the world right now. But there are also the Bene Gesserit, who are spiritual colonizers, who've been injecting a cargo of dogma and doctrines and stories into these people's culture to make them manipulable, to propagandize them, to prepare them for direction at the Bene Gesserit hand. And Paul is the inheritor of both of those colonial birthrights. And he is afraid of their power. He is dubious of their moral standing. But when his family is broken, he's cast out into the desert. They are the only lever of power he possesses. And he sees the future or glimpses of it. He is weighing the best possibility against the worst. And in the end, maybe to prevent a Harkonnen Imperium, maybe to free the Fremen people, maybe for revenge, maybe for some mix of all these things, he chooses to pull the levers of power. And in that council of leaders in the south, he goes. And he really, they're the three powers on Arrakis, the Bene Gesserit, the Imperium, and the Fremen. He claims power over them all and unites them into one thing, which is immensely powerful. I always get chills even now watching that scene where he puts on the ring and he claims the religious mantle and he says, "I don't need to fight a chief to speak at this meeting because I am a new kind of chief and I am above you all." And in that way, he combines all three of these domains of power and claims them in order to steer the future. And he's not certain in the moment he does it that it's the right thing to do. He's never sure. And I think that's fascinating about Paul, that he is a young man willing to do terrible things, but who is always weighing their moral consequence and never entirely sure he's doing the right thing.
There's something that when Frank Herbert, we understood that Frank Herbert was disappointed by the way the readers perceived the first novel, that they saw it as a celebration of Paul Atreides, and he wanted to do the right opposite. He wanted to do a condemnation. He wanted to do a cautionary tale about messianic figures. And he, in order to make sure that his ideas were clear, he wrote a second book called Dune Messiah. That is almost like an epilogue of the first book. I think that this second movie is more faithful to Frank Herbert's initial desires to make a story that is a warning against the mix of politics and religion. And in order to do so, we were more faithful to Frank Herbert than to the book, actually. Meaning that, no, but it's knowing that, having this knowledge. So this is why there's a shifting moment where the more the movie progresses, the more we slowly fall into Shani's perspective. And that's why we transform Shani's character, giving her an agenda, giving her a purpose, and making her a prominent figure, a character into the story. In the book, Shani disappear in the shadows. She's a less important character, but we thought that there was a strong opportunity here to help us to bring that story to the screen in the way Frank Herbert, I think, was wishing to.
Wow. That makes so much sense because we're with Paul so much. We've been in love with him. We root for him. So then it was without Shani's. If you didn't put give me another option to embody myself as an audience, I would feel like I would probably not question Paul as much as I did towards the end of the film. I was feeling unsure about how I feel about him suddenly.
He also goes through something about as unrelatable as can be for a protagonist's experience. He passes within, he inherits millennia of memories, he sees a vast expanse of constantly shifting and uncertain futures, and he has to chart his course. And I'm pretty imaginative, and I'm foggiest idea what that would feel like.
Is it like singularity? Kind of?
Yes, exactly. He turns inside out, like the world, the universe opens itself. Yeah. And so to watch that from the outside is a truer telling.
It's such a relevant film, right now. And we're not just talking about messiahs, but also the population that's being controlled. And many are disillusioned populations that are still able to be manipulated and with so much information, all of that. So without getting too, political about things, but how is living in today's world and all the world events that's happening in the last 10 years, 20 years, has that seeped into the writing of the or is it?
I think it was already there. What's fascinating is that Frank Herbert wrote the book in some ways as an allegory about the petroleum economy and resource extraction and imperialism in the third world at that time. It is not a straightforward allegory or commentary on the politics of his moment, but obviously it's deeply informed by those politics. And what's amazing is that now, 60 years later, all of those themes, if anything, ring more strongly. They were already resonant, but the world is still reverberating, not just with the same clashes of human nature, but with the actual descendant dynamics of the dynamics that were brought in his day. Those things have never died. They have only grown, like a kind of jihad of their own, of imperialistic economics and political economics that grip our world. So it really is it's more as if there are principles of human nature that give the world a shape, and they're as much abroad in the world and maybe more visible now as they were when Herbert first wrote his novel.
When we were working on the structure and this idea that Shani will have a critical distance that would she give us perspective on Paul, I remember being inspired by events that happened in the 60s in the provinces of Quebec, where before the 60s, where I'm coming from, the church, Catholic Church, was ruling. They were like controlling politics. Religion is important and great, but it must not control politics. It's like, so that's what happened. And that brought to me the idea that the youth in the Fremen, there will be a dissension among the Fremen. The younger Fremen will not believe that those ideas coming from the outside should rule them. Yes.
That was beautifully conveyed, I thought. Jon, this one's for you. Was there anything you learned from working on Prometheus, which I love, that prepared you from tackling another huge sci-fi project?
Well, there's a tension every time you are extending a fictional world that is already populated with true believers and fans who love that thing. And you have to honor it, and you have to know it well. You're beholden to them to become a scholar of that thing. Often it means going to the fandom who, in the case of films particularly, generally know the fictional world that has been created better than the creator themselves in no time. They study every little bit of background, every matte painting, every little ornament on a uniform, and they know, in the end, there are people who know it better than any one person who made the film because they become these fanatical scholars of the thing. And they are resources when you're then making a sequel and you go back to it. And at the same time, you've got to be brave enough to do new things because the story needs to stand and to move people, to move you first as you tell it. And that may mean breaking new ground. And that's the other side of the balance.
Okay, so for Dune fans out there, it's a final shot of the Baron and homage to David Lynch.
Yes, the ants in the ear is like a Blue Velvet idea, and I thought that I love David Lynch. And I thought that I know he will never see the movie. But I thought that it was a nice gesture to say hello, David.
What do you mean he won't see the movie? How do you know that?
I don't think that's stay between us. But I don't think he's interested.
Okay.
I don't think. And if ever I meet David Lynch, I don't think I'm going to talk to him about Dune.
Directing a project like Dune, and especially 2 in a row, is a huge endeavor. So, can you guys talk about the sacrifices you have to make personally to do this? And obviously, we know what's great about it, but we want to know, and how has that changed you in a way?
This one's you.
No, but I will say I finished the movie recently. It's like I'm a bit to be honest, too close to it to talk about. But of course, it had a massive impact on me as a filmmaker. I saw when we make a film, what strikes us and comes straight into our faces is our limits and where we have to improve. And first of all, it was the first time I had the chance to revisit a universe, to go back and knowing where I failed in the first one and where I should improve. And that was like a blessing in some ways, very interesting. But it's like it's a bit early to talk about what will be the impact on me and the sacrifice. But it's always. I absolutely deeply love cinema, but the thing that is a sacrifice is family. I mean, how many months and years away from home, and that's something that is always like a scar somewhere deep.
On that note, I have a dear friend whose home country is at war right now and hasn't been able to go home, and he told me to stay strong, to deal with all of that. He hasn't been able to cry for a long time until he watched Dune 2. He was able to watch the humanity and the safety that you have created, this beautiful, fantastic, thrilling world, a fantasy that we can escape into and yet deeply grounded, not only just in human emotions, but also so relevant to the kind of both light and darkness that's within and out of us that's creating the world we live in. And he's able to sob through your movie. And so I want to say thank you to both of you for saving cinema, but also giving us such an incredible experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloé.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. You're so generous.